Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, for those of us in Australia, and good morning to those of you joining us from India. So I'd like to thank everyone joining us online and welcome to the Energy Transitions and Climate Change Resilience Workshop, part of the Australia-India Research Collaboration Framework. Before we move on, I'd like to do the acknowledgement of our country. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I am speaking to you today here in Adelaide, South Australia. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands across Australia from which other people are joining us today and extend my respect to all First Nations peoples. And finally, I further extend this respect to our colleagues in India who are joining us today, whose own rich traditions of caring for land and sharing knowledge, continuing to shape sustainable futures globally. So today, this session brings researchers, early, mid, and senior researchers, government and industry stakeholders from both Australia and India to explore how we can collaborate on energy transitions and climate resilience, a theme of shared importance and global urgency. This is a collaborative and discussion-driven workshop. Your insights will directly shape the direction of the Australia-India Research Collaborative Framework and help identify where partnerships can have the most impact. In this workshop today, we'll start with a brief overview of the framework itself, followed by a series of expert presentations from Indian and Australian perspectives. After that, we'll move into three themed breakout sessions, each aligned to the framework's pillars: promote, support, and translate. Now, Professor Buddhi and myself will take a moment to briefly introduce ourselves. My name is Frank Bruno. I'm joining you from Adelaide in South Australia, where I am a research professor and the South Australian Chair in Energy at the University of South Australia. So I've worked in sustainable energy for over 30 years, focusing on thermal energy storage, renewable energy integration, and energy systems that support sustainability in collaboration with industry, government, and international partners. I also serve as a South Australian node leader for the Collaborative Research Centre called Race for 2030 CRC, that stands for Reliable, Affordable, Clean Energy Collaborative Research Centre. It funds and supports collaborative research to accelerate Australia's energy transition through energy efficiency, electrification, and low carbon solutions. Now, I'm especially pleased to co-lead this workshop with Professor Dharam Buddhi as we explore how Australia and India can collaborate on the pressing challenges of energy transitions and climate resilience. So, Professor Buddhi, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks. A very good morning and good afternoon to the Australian team. Myself, Professor Dharam Buddhi, I am a co-lead of this AISRF program. Basically, as Professor Frank has mentioned, I have been associated with the field of energy more than 35 years, and we, both of us, are working together in the same area of research, that is energy storage. We are associated with each other for last 25 years, and presently we are working on an Indo-Australia project, which is basically on thermal energy storage for drying of the agro products. If I talk about my task, what I have done till now, I have been international consultant to Asian Development Bank, as well as I have transferred technologies related to thermal energy storage to industries. And presently, I'm serving as a Vice Chancellor of Uttaranchal University. Thanks everyone for joining us, and let us hope the outcomes of this conference will be very useful to both the countries, India and Australia. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Professor Buddhi. So, as Professor Buddhi mentioned, I mean, we actually met at a conference back in 2000, so that's quite a bit of time away. But it was about 2 decades later when I was interested in applying for a project relevant to the area that we're both working in, thermal energy storage, and I wanted to apply to the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund. So it was obvious for me to try to reach out to Professor Buddhi, as we'd kept in touch with reading our publications. And we were successful in that funding, and so it was that particular funding scheme that laid the foundation for a strong professional relationship, and since then we've gone to secure another grant, and here we are today co-leading this workshop. So that's our story, but we'd like to hear other people's stories, experiences, and also if anyone has any ideas as well on how we can increase Australia-India collaboration. So the very next thing we'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce Associate Professor Hari Priya Rangan, Principal Consultant of Government Projects at the Australia-India Institute. Priya will take us through the Australia-India Research Collaborative Framework, which underpins today's thematic workshop. So, Priya, can you please present your presentation, please?
Thank you, Frank, and welcome everyone. I'd like to just say a few words about our project and want to take off from where Frank mentioned that his collaboration goes over the past 2 decades, and over these 2 decades, the research relationship between the two countries has deepened substantially, and there are more than 450 formal academic and research collaboration partnerships at the moment. We also are now partners. I think India is now Australia's 9th largest research partner. This is a very strong foundation, but there's still a lot of potential for growth, and this is what we are hoping to unlock in this project. Broadly speaking, this is a project that is practical, looking forward to strengthen the Australia-India research collaboration, and it's supported by the Australian Government Department of Education, and we'd like to thank and acknowledge them for making this possible. So idea is to make sure that we can find a framework which enables the relationship that is emerging and that is very strong to expand and deepen. And the idea is to support a whole range of engagement across priority areas, interdisciplinary and subdisciplinary, and see how we can foster innovation and long-term partnership development. We are hoping to develop a framework that can be guiding engagement over a 5-year period and is focused on good, strong outcomes. So the 4 areas that we identified for this framework to begin with, because obviously we couldn't cover everything, is these 4: energy and transitions and climate change resilience being the first one that we're part of. And we have the remaining 3 happening in the upcoming weeks: sustaining healthy communities, advanced manufacturing technologies, and cybersecurity and digital governance. The whole idea is to focus on 3 ways of how we can strengthen these research partnerships, the framework. And we've talked about promote, support, and translate. And these are things that we'd like you to think about while you are engaging in this workshop. We kind of have sketched out a kind of rough idea of how we think of this framework, and we'd like you to keep this in mind, if possible, while you are having your discussions. Overall, if you look at this, the ARCH is literally a way of conceptualizing the framework, with the base being the strong bilateral cooperation areas, the comprehensive strategic partnership, the comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, the Australia-India Education and Skills Council. And what you see here is that Australian and Indian researchers are actually at the real critical springing edge of where the ARCH, actually the collaborative activities, take place. They have a whole range of research themes. Each research theme may have its own requirements, its own interests, and specific needs, which would then define the kind of collaborative activities that would take place. So which is why, you know, in the ARCH space, we have left it open for you to identify what kinds of activities need to be carried out. Now, in the ARCH pillars, you have all the different major stakeholders who will play different roles. And some of you may play roles in these areas. Some of you may play roles may operate in more than one of these areas. But broadly speaking, what we wanted you to conceptualize is that this is the architecture that we sort of envisage as part of the framework, and that your contributions in this workshop, all the discussions that you have that are focused on the substantive issues, can actually also inform how these different players, stakeholders can be involved, at what stage, what kind of resourcing is required for all of these different kinds of impact or outputs, you know, whether short term, medium term, or long term. All of these things require us to think about how we want to leverage and draw on the different resources and expertise from all of these different stakeholders, how they can facilitate the Australian Indian researchers to work collaboratively in these research teams, and how we can learn from these examples and these ideas to expand it and make it broader. So I just wanted to give you that kind of idea. Sorry. And broadly speaking, at the center of the ARCH, the keystone of the ARCH is ARCH India, the platform that Australia India Institute manages. It has set up and manages to facilitate information sharing, collaboration, information, stories, experiences. And Australia India Institute itself plays a bit of a role in facilitating some of these collaborative activities with the help of funding from the Department of Education. So it's up to you to think about how we can mobilize and use all of these different players, including ARCH India, to make the relationship, the research relationship, stronger. So thank you very much, and I hope we have some very productive conversations today at this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. I think you have basically set the goal of the participants and the speakers. Once again, I, Professor Dharam Buddhi, welcome India-Australia Research Collaboration Framework, all participants and speakers. Today, we will now hear from a group of distinguished speakers who bring deep expertise in renewable energy, sustainability, and climate resilience. Their insights will help frame today's discussions, offering both Indian and Australian perspectives on key opportunities for collaboration. Our first speaker is Mr. Alok Kumar. He is a very senior IAS officer of Government of India. Presently, Mr. Alok Kumar is Director General of the All India Discom Association and partner at the Lantau Group. He brings over 35 years of experience in public policy and economic development through India's premier federal civil service. As a former Secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Power, he oversaw one of the world's largest power system and led major sectorial reforms in the field of energy. I invite Mr. Alok Kumar and request that he should share his thoughts in 10 minutes. Mr. Alok Kumar.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dharam Buddhi ji, for introducing me. I'm very happy to be speaking in this event online. As I have been introduced, I have taken over the new responsibility as Director General of All India Discoms Association. Very briefly, it's a collaborative body of all distribution utilities in India, and they aim to come together to have their voice heard before policymakers and regulators, and to collaborate for experience sharing, best practices, and how to harmonize procurement and other similar activities. Let me begin. My topic I've chosen, I've been given, is the India's energy transition, progress made so far, and the challenges ahead. India presents a very interesting case. Historically, it has added a minimal share of global emissions. Presently, it has, compared to world averages, very low per capita energy consumption, very low per capita income, and very low per capita emission. But in future, India is going to be the second largest emitter in the world. So if you see the total spectrum, the history, the present and future, India presents a very challenging and interesting story in the matter of energy transition. Our transition story, I can say, began around the oil shock in this early 70s of last century. India formed a commission on alternative sources of energy. That is the beginning of promoting renewable energy in the country for the sake of energy security. We formed a dedicated Ministry of Renewable Energy. India passed an Energy Conservation Act in 2000, and we have imposed renewable purchase obligations on all electricity consumers in India. India actively participated in the Clean Development Mechanism, and under Paris Agreement, it has not only met the original NDCs, even the updated NDCs are going to be achieved much ahead of time. The first NDC was the 50% installed generation capacity for electricity should come from non-fossil fuels. India achieved this milestone in last month, 5 years ahead of the target line 2030. Second NDC is reducing our emission intensity from 2005 levels by 45% when we hit 2030. Going by the data available, India has achieved 36% reduction, and India has taken several major national programs to further achieve the emission intensity. But that is the one side of the story. India is facing unprecedented growth in demand of energy and demand of electricity. Electrification is the backbone of our energy transition strategy. So Indian distribution companies, India's generation companies, transmission companies, they are facing a humongous task of adding capacities in a prudent manner, timely, to meet the energy demand of India, to make it possible to become a developed country, and also to contribute to energy transition of the world. As is well known, power generation in India is heavily dependent on coal, because India's gas resources, domestic gas resources, are really constrained. Most of the countries in the world have moved to gas for cleaner power generation, but India has that constraint, a limitation. So our power generation stays heavily dependent on coal. And that is the reason that despite of adding new renewable capacity at historical pace and unprecedented scale, India's emission factor is sticky at around 0.71 kilos of CO2 per unit of electricity generated. Now, India has seen one of the fastest expansion of renewable energy capacity, and we want to add more. Our national target is 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel capacity by 2030. What are the challenges? Though renewable energy may be cheaper in terms of the levelized cost of energy, but our utilities are facing a challenge in the higher cost of integration of RE in the grid because of balancing costs, storage costs, and stranded costs. India needs to back down its thermal power plants during day hours, and that adds to the stranded cost of the utilities. Our project execution is also facing several challenges because of the right-of-way, land availability, and also the dependency on imports for clean energy goods. Like India is importing most of the solar cells and most of the battery cells for storage. We also have a legacy of cross subsidies. Being a developing country, the tariffs, consumer tariffs in India, the industrial and commercial consumers, they cross subsidize the residential and agricultural consumers, which are politically very sensitive. These cross subsidies, they act as a barrier to direct procurement by industrial consumers, the open access, and even to some extent the expansion in rooftop solar. Because the cross subsidies, loss of cross subsidies, it brings up a challenge in rise in consumer tariffs. India has taken up a very ambitious program of a smart metering all consumers except agricultural, all distribution transformers, and all feeders, with the intent and aim to shift demand from non-solar hours to solar hours. India has also taken up a very big project of segregating the supply to agricultural consumers so that these consumers can be supplied from solar energy during day hours and they don't burden the non-solar hour demand of the grid. So if we summarize and see in totality, there are two big challenges in accelerating the pace of energy transition of India. India stands committed to further accelerate energy transition, but what are those two challenges? First, the affordability. In India, an household, it spends more than 6% of its income on energy costs. Whereas in a country like Canada, this percentage is hardly 3%. So for a poor country, for low-income country like India, affordability of energy prices is a big issue politically. So the pace of integration, it impacts the cost of energy supplied. The second biggest challenge is import dependence. As I told you, more than 80% of solar cells are imported, and they are from a single country. Similarly, largely all battery cells for our storage devices are imported. India, being a developing country, a lot of youth cannot afford to continue with this import dependency. Reducing import dependency has three constraints. It needs time, it needs technology transfer, and also it has a cost, because to promote domestic industries, we need some protection and some incentive to the manufacturers. That has to some extent increased the cost of renewable energy for our consumers. There's a limit to which we can accelerate the pace of energy transition. And India being constrained in gas, and we're trying to develop nuclear, the renewable energy promotion, the solar and wind are the only solution. And if we have limitation on the pace of their acceleration, meanwhile, coal is the mainstay for electricity generation in India. I will say, looking at the historical responsibility, which is very less for India in the emissions so far added, India is an interesting case which is trying to increase its pace for energy transition, but there are some practical considerations. And I firmly believe, I'm very optimistic that India will come over these constraints in 4 or 5 years. Our storage capacity is going to grow very fast. Our industrialists have taken up the local manufacturing of the clean energy goods. And when we are scaling up, our costs will also further come down. So I believe India will be able to contribute to the global efforts for energy transition in a big way. Now also it is contributing, it will contribute in a bigger way. That's a perspective I wanted to share. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Thank you very much. Dharam Buddhi ji, you are on mute, we can't hear you.
Okay, you're still on mute, Dharam.
Yeah. Thank you, Alok ji, for introducing the India's energy transition, achievements and challenges. Hope the agenda which you have set will be guidelines for both the countries. Thank you very much to be one of the first speaker in this India-Australia Framework Conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Professor Renette Egan, Executive Director of the Australian Centre for Advanced Photovoltaics, the National Centre for Photovoltaics Research led by the University of New South Wales. Professor Egan has worked for 20 years in manufacturing and industrial technology within the energy sector and co-chairs the India-Australia Solar Task Force. I invite Professor Renette, please initiate your talk. Most welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping you can hear me well enough. It's what a terrific initiative, and thank you for bringing this together between Australia and India. I have had the great pleasure of working with Indian colleagues on the Australia-India opportunity for a while now. I have some slides to share, and I might just do a quick share. I've only got 2 slides, so I won't, but it helps frame up some of the conversations. Actually, before I go there, I'll tell you a little bit about, so what the slides relate to the Australia-India Solar Task Force and the work that was done and the recommendations that were made. But having just heard the previous briefing on the India opportunity, I thought I'd frame up a little bit more about the Australian opportunity, and that is that Australia is already, for electrification, is at least already 40% renewables, effectively 20% solar and 20% wind, and has a target of 82% renewables by 2030, and a significant amount of government policy in support of that. No, I haven't got slides yet, they're coming. I'm just giving a briefing first. We do need to accelerate deployment to meet our 2030 targets, and we're building up work now on our 2035 targets, which will go beyond obviously the 2030 targets. At the same time, we're looking at that's electrification. At the same time, we're looking at the broader broader energy sector, and how the energy transition is going to impact Australia economically, in that our 2 largest exports, or some of our largest exports, are coal and gas. So we're expecting world markets in coal and gas to decline, and we need to supplement coal and gas as export earners for Australia with alternatives. And the vision is that with the nature of our, we are a small population in a large, with a large landmass, significant wind and solar resources, and that Australia is particularly well placed to be for green minerals processing. We also have significant mineral resources. So the logical step is for us to invest in green minerals processing and become an exporter of processed minerals rather than ores, which is what we currently export. So there's a fair bit of transformation in the Australian sector. We do not have a lot of manufacturing in this country. We do a lot of agriculture and resource extraction and exporting the raw minerals. Australia needs to add value to those products and to leverage our significant solar and wind resources. So that's the sort of the Australian plan, is to be a renewable energy superpower, in that we provide processed minerals and resources into that broader economy, which will rely on solar and wind and batteries. With that perspective, and now I will share my slides. All going well? Share? Okay, good. Now I'm hoping you can see a single slide. Please, somebody put their hand up. Can you see my slide? Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So, I put these timelines on that because I think it's actually really important to reflect on timing and progress. We are on an energy transition with timelines and goals. And Australia has a 2030 goal, but ultimately a 2050 goal to be net zero. And I'm very mindful of the progress of time, because we started this conversation on the Australia-India opportunity in 2022 with the signing of a letter of intent between the Australia and India. In 2023, we started the Solar Task Force, and we made recommendations in July 2023. That task force was I co-chaired with Anil Kotantara. Apologies if I get that wrong. We made recommendations in July 2023, and I will go through some of those recommendations shortly. We've participated in a roundtable in mid-2024 with the Australian Minister and representatives from India. There's been a consultation with on Australia-India Green Pathways, and now I'm participating in this workshop with you. I'm mindful of the passing of time, but I actually think, and I'm looking forward to the conversations today, I actually think we are seeing progress already on the back of some of the recommendations that we made back in July 2023. So I will go through those recommendations for you. Oops, I can get that to work. Yep, okay. So this was the task force where I was supported in Australia by 3 colleagues, and Anil was supported by colleagues in India. We made some significant recommendations where I've seen progress already, with the point being that Australia and India have complementary skills and expertise and opportunities that we bring to this energy transition. Australia has significant resources and technical expertise, particularly around solar, and experience to date in deployment, particularly around rooftop deployment and increasingly large scale. And with that, we have a lot of learnings about grid integration and grid stability when you've got a lot of solar on the grid. So with 40% of our electricity generation met by solar and wind already. So the challenge was to map where the 2 nations could work together best across that the energy transition, in particular with a view to solar, because we were tasked with a solar task force, and from that to prioritize actions based on the opportunities that were identified, then in particular to resource activities around education and training. That's another place where we thought that there was a significant synergy between our 2 nations, where there's expertise and experience in Australia and opportunity and growth in India, and there was a really big opportunity there to resource that. Australia also needs to grow its workforce for this energy transition. Importantly, one of our recommendations was to secure support for innovation in the energy transition through collaboration between our 2 nations, focusing on research, and then to take that into commercialization, with a view to the fact that while the change in India is going to be so significant over a relatively short time frame, with a really significant market, so an opportunity to actually implement and innovate in India, it's greater than the opportunity in Australia, because the Australian market is relatively small. We're a population of 26 million people. So there's the resourcing, the skills base that we build off is high, but the resource values numbers are low, whereas in India, that resource and capability and innovative capacity, plus the need and the demand for change, is much higher.
Please summarize.
Okay, there's a really big opportunity there for India to play a really big role. And then finally for the governments of both nations to de-risk investment, to really accelerate change. That's it. That's all I had to say. And I really look forward to the afternoon's discussions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Rennet. And you have discussed very well solar and decarbonization, the opportunities available in India and Australia. I hope we will be taking it further in collaborations. And of course, this is one of the need of the hour. Thank you very much to be participating as a speaker in this workshop. And now we have our third speaker,
Check.
Professor Rangan Banerjee, who has made a significant contribution in the field of energy. Presently, Director, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. His area of interest include energy management, modeling of energy systems, energy planning and policy, hydrogen, energy and fuel cell. Professor Banerjee has led the establishment of a megawatt scale solar thermal research facility and advised national agencies, including NITI Aayog and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, on energy transition issues. Today, Professor Rangan Banerjee would be talking with us renewable energy transition and climate change. I invite Professor Rangan Banerjee. Please, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Buddhi. And I'd like to just reiterate that the earlier speakers have already, Mr. Alok Kumar has given the perspective on India, and Professor Egan has shown what are the kind of potentials that Australia-India collaboration may hold. I'm going to highlight a few of these things again, and we'll start with just looking at India is about 1/6 of the world, and as was mentioned, Australia is a smaller country, much more resources, 26 million population, but you can see the average energy footprint, energy per capita consumption, as well as the CO2 emissions of the average Australian is, of course, significantly higher than for India. But as India, as we develop the requirement that we will have for energy resources and and finally provide the energy that is required for our growing demands of our population, we have to do that sustainably, and this is a challenge which we have. Currently, we have also been making a transition to renewables. Out of our installed capacity of 460 gigawatt, a significant proportion now is based on non-fossil and renewables and hydro. Of course, by generation, because of the capacity factors, that share is lower than in Australia, but it's a growing share. And just to give you a perspective, today is as of 31st May, we have a 235 gigawatts of installed capacity of non-fossil fuels, which includes around 178 gigawatts of wind, solar, and others. So solar is highest, and followed by wind. And as we look at even by generation, if we add the renewables and hydro, we are talking of about 22% of renewables. And this is a big change from the past. And as we go forward, there are challenges. We've, as a part of our NDCs in Paris, we committed to going to about 40% cumulative non-fossil power by installed capacity, and we are on our way to do that. In COP26, our Prime Minister announced the target of 500 gigawatts of non-fossil power installed capacity by 2030, and that 50% of our energy mix would be renewables by 2030. We are, and you can see the installed capacity share growing up over time, and the generation also going. In the past, we've had a transition where we moved away from the traditional biomass, and we are now moving to, we've completely moved towards fossil. Now we are moving away from fossil into renewables and going towards, and so there are a whole set of transitions. The electricity sector is transiting from the supply mix. We are focusing on efficiency. In the transport sector, we have a lot of electric vehicles. We also have some, biofuel, methanol, and some hydrogen, but predominantly electric. Cooking energy is a big challenge because we've moved from traditional to LPG, and the question is, where do we transit now? Is it modern biomass or is it electricity? Buildings, we hope to see more net zero and energy plus buildings, and our industry, we have a large number of hard to abate industrial sectors. We think that these can also go towards low carbon. These transitions are driven by move away from fossil and drop in prices of PV and wind. And also we should be seeing more decentralized, and this is something where we can learn from Australia, because you've had much more of rooftop solar and decentralized systems. Our net zero trajectory is, we've taken a little more time, so we are looking at 2070 as the target year. And I'd just like to highlight one challenge of the transition. So this is an example of Rajasthan. We have a large solar plant, 2,250 megawatts, very large Bhadla solar park. We have also about 1,000 megawatts of wind. And just to give you a glimpse of a particular day in 2024, where we have thermal in the Rajasthan northern grid, thermal power plant, solar and wind, and you can see that during the peak time, the contribution of solar and wind is almost insignificant. And it is then the question then becomes that when we look at moving forward, we basically are looking at a situation where we will have to have more, every unit, that every additional solar PV that we provide beyond a certain mix is going to be used at another period of time. So we need to either have storage or we need to have demand flexibility. And these are ways in which the grid has to operate, which is going to be quite different from this. So what are the issues related to our future energy systems? Since the nature of the supply is different, we need to be able to have much better forecasting, daily, seasonal, looking at sudden random fluctuations, need for storage and flexibility. There's also a climate change impact on renewables that we need to look at. I'll show you just a few things. We also need to look at what happens to stranded assets, impact on the economy, what happens to the existing investments in the fossil infrastructure, and also the impact on vulnerable populations. So one of the studies showed that over a period of time, because of the change in the kind of climate change over the Indian Ocean, the wind speeds over a period of time between 2017 and 20 have actually declined at two of these locations, Jamnagar and in Tamil Nadu. You can see very clearly the decline. We made some projections of what happens over a 2050 time period, and you can see the map which shows that most of the country, actually the solar PV generation potential declines by, of course, a small percentage, but 2.5 to about 7.5% per. And in the for wind also, we are looking at most of the regions, a few regions increasing, but typically it's declining by 10 to 20%. We also need to look at ways in which we can, the aerosol impact, we can look at different kinds of, and we talked about forecasting. So the other issue is some of our solar and wind is in a particular region, and the remaining, the coal belt is in a different country, so different state. So what happens is that though net we are creating jobs, there's a displacement of jobs in regions, and this means that there will be an impact which we need to study. This is just an image of our rooftop in IIT Delhi, and we are doing a study trying to look at different development compatible net zero pathways for India. So to quickly summarize that we have different, the transition is not easy. There are several costs and impacts. There are different national priorities. There's significant uncertainties and scope for research in technology, systems, and policies. We have had a partnership with the University of Queensland for strategic research. We have about 100 joint PhD programs. I think there are a lot of synergies in India and Australia, and we can identify areas which are of mutual benefit where we can work together. And I think we at IIT Delhi will be happy to partner and work on this. And these are some of the references. I will stop here. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Banerjee, for sharing the India and Australia energy scenario. And I hope that India would be able to meet the renewable energy targets. But the most important point which you have raised, the induction of new technologies, in particular IoT, and I say Energy 4.0, perhaps it would be better. And I hope the issues raised by you are very important. And I hope the India and Australia team would be focusing and working in future with them. Thank you very much for participating. We are really grateful to you. Thank you very much. And now our final speaker for this session is Dr. Kreet. Dr. Kreet is a managing director of ITP Thermal. He has over 30 years of experience in the energy field, focusing on solar thermal energy, hydrogen and ammonia, combined with 15 years of teaching experiences, undergraduate and postgraduate courses in energy engineering. He has been advising and working with the ITP India team for many years. I invite you, sir, please share your thoughts. Professor Kreet.
Thank you, Professor Buddhi. Is my screen sharing working okay?
Yeah.
And that should be full screen now?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you again, Professor Buddhi, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Frank, for inviting me to give this talk. I guess my talk is by way of a kind of a case study of some actual collaboration, but also talking a bit more specifically about solar thermal as implicitly an area for future collaboration, and hopefully some insights there, and also to give you some more thoughts on a technology that contributes to our energy transition in general. I'll start by just noting that Dr. Indradip Mitra, the person who led this work, is online with us today, and will no doubt join the chat. So, yeah, supporting the International Solar Alliance on a new solar thermal program. First of all, the IT Power Group and the fact that we are a collaboration, we've got a long connection with India. IT Power is a renewable energy consulting a group of companies now. It was established in the UK back in 1981. Now we've got IT Power Private Limited in India, Indradip's company. In Australia, we have ITP Renewables, and just by way, Renata Egan is in fact one of the independent directors for ITP Renewables. I'm here as ITP Thermal Proprietary Limited, which is within the group specialising in thermal and hydrogen as it happens. We had ITP Energize in the UK. They've actually been bought out, a bit too successful for our own good, really. But IT Power Private Limited, the Indian company, led this work and together with ITP Thermal on this project for the International Solar Alliance. So who is the International Solar Alliance? It's a collaborative initiative that was initially between India and France, but now has 120 member countries, including Australia, most importantly, and India. Obviously, a mission to accelerate the adoption of solar energy technology for energy security and greater energy welfare. It's prioritising least development countries. The 120 member countries span the whole range of development levels, but in terms of the assistance it's giving, it's looking at least developed countries and small island developing states as a priority. It is headquartered in Delhi, and it has these 9 programs, of which I've highlighted number 7 there, solarizing, heating and cooling. So you see the word solar, but of course, one of the themes here is that the word solar now is almost universally taken to mean solar photovoltaics, but this particular piece of work we're doing is to help the ISA extend their thinking into the solar thermal area and remind people that that is also solar. So what was the task? To help them accelerate the deployment of solar thermal, in addition to all their existing activities, specifically, we were tasked with a global review, developing a program framework, recommendations for activities, recommendations on capacity building, monitoring and reporting, and to give them some assessment tools to help them going forward with that program. As I said, it was led by ITP in India, supported by my own company, but also with support from the Eastern Switzerland University of Applied Sciences by way of technical expertise and review. So solar thermal technologies, it's not just one technology, it's a whole range of technologies. And there's this theme that is really helpful to understand, which is to say increasing temperature equals increasing complexity equals increasing cost. So you could start with unglazed, very simple flat plate collectors, go to glazed flat plate collectors to get us up to something below 100 degrees, evacuated tube collectors, maybe some non-tracking mirrors, and then get into the concentrators that let you access higher temperatures, but with moving mirrors now, and obviously the greater complexity. The parabolic troughs, when you get to 2-axis tracking, you've got higher temperatures indeed. Finally, you get to the big dish that in my previous life I developed at ANU. But it's important to note that when you talk about solar thermal as a global industry, it's basically flat plate or evacuated tube making hot water. That's 90% of what's installed in the world. But as we're thinking about what the ISA should do, and indeed what Australia and India might do, there's also an issue of scale. Because we can actually talk about things at the household level, let's say just a kilowatt, small little hot water systems or even solar cookers. We can think about small industry, which might be at the small megawatt scale, and we can think about large industry in the hundreds of megawatts. So we've got this sort of matrix of temperatures of use and size of use that needs to be thought about. And it's not... in as much as a photovoltaic panel has almost become a generic universal product now that does all jobs, that's not the case in solar thermal. What can we use solar thermal for? Well, a whole range of things. Most of it is used for heating hot water. Some of that hot water is just hot water use domestically, but it's also used for district heating in Europe and space heating and so on. Then there's a whole range of other uses there noted, including solar thermal power generation is definitely one to think about for both our countries. And one of the really important things to say is that one of the major advantages of a solar thermal technology in whatever application it is and whatever temperature, whatever scale, is the ability to incorporate long duration thermal energy storage as part of the system. So that is really to be thought about in all sectors. Okay, but where are we? How significant is it? Well, as I said earlier, the word solar is almost sort of taken to mean just photovoltaics, but there was a time about a decade ago when there was more solar thermal capacity in the world than photovoltaic, but that is no longer the case. But it is still a very large global industry. If you look at the heat there's about 540 gigawatts of solar thermal heat installed. There's 7 gigawatts electrical of solar thermal power, but that translates to about 20 gigawatts of solar thermal heat collectors. So you could add that on to the solar thermal heat on the left if you wish. So you can say it's about 25% of photovoltaics. So it's somewhat being...
Please summarize. Requested to please summarize.
Okay. All right. The long period of growth right up to 2012, but now it's kind of slowed a bit. But it's also meaningful to think about, well, okay, we're all making good progress on electricity, but heat as an end use is very significant, and the world hasn't moved quite so far on heat yet. There's a lot of advantages, but I'll just take that second bullet point there. This is something that can be manufactured regionally and locally much better. And we heard from Alok Kumar about the import dependence. So this is an area where countries like India, Australia, and the countries in the alliance can think about helping to be a bit more resilient with their local manufacturing challenges and solutions. And finally, suggestions to the ISA, self-evident, hire a good team internally, make sure they're trained, send them on visits, then look at the various countries, detailed country analysis, engage with policymakers, select pilot and demonstration projects, which is important but has to be done well, and finally assist with the financing and training. And I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Kate. You have raised very great concern about the thermal energy, basically. Most of the International Solar Alliance is focused on PV power. But I hope that thermal has a major use potential in various fields. So I hope the ignored data, this ignored field of solar thermal would also be taken care by both the countries, India and Australia. Thank you very much for sharing valuable suggestions to the audience, to the team, to the board. Thank you very much, and let us hope we'll be working together. Now I hand it over to Professor Frank. Professor Frank, to you.
Thank you, Professor Buddhi. Okay, yeah, I'd like to thank all four speakers. I thought they were great presentations. They gave us basically an idea how energy is being generated in both countries, and what technologies are being considered for the future. So I think it's given us a good background, and also I think there's been a bit of some sort of what Australia-India collaboration is already happening in this sort of thing. We're now going to move into the breakout sessions. The first one's going to be on Promote, which is the Promote pillar of the Australia-India Research Collaborative Framework. And, we want to discuss how we can encourage the development of new and interdisciplinary research collaborations as well. Now, before we go there, we're going to listen to two speakers, and we're going to have three breakout sessions. So I want to make sure we have a break between the first and the second. So can I ask for the next two speakers to please try to stick to your 5 minutes? First, I'm going to welcome distinguished Professor Dharam Buddhi from the University of New South Wales, an international authority and recognised leader in the field of sustainable buildings and cities. He is among the leading advocates for sustainability in Australia, with his contributions having been widely acknowledged at all levels of government and professions in Australia. So, Dharam Buddhi, please go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Frank. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, good. So as you mentioned, my focus area is to get the buildings and cities right. So it's not only a supply side issue, but matching it with the demand side, energy efficiency, and right down to the building basic planning parameters and design parameters, right, so that we absolutely minimize the carbon impact of what we do. We look at whole of life of buildings. And whole of buildings. So embedded carbon, the materials might be made elsewhere. In other words, embedded carbon in steel, aluminium, concrete, we know all about that. How do we get new materials right? And a lot has to do with getting the supply side right in the manufacture side of the equation. But there's also the design and planning, as well as a number of mentions for rooftop photovoltaic, so on-site generation as well as off-site generation, getting all of that right. In my own case, I was running a cooperative research center in terms of collaborative experience, which is a $100 million Australian collaboration of industry, research, and governments. And we had large numbers of industry partners trying to take research outcomes to impact. And that had its end of life a few years ago. And now I'm heading what's called the New South Wales Decarbonisation Innovation Hub. Here we are looking at new technologies, new materials, new systems going forward. In other words, if Australia is going to sell less coal to the world, then what else will we be in the pipeline that will, there's a whole range of systems and pipelines in the process through good research going past proof of concept into commercialization, but there's often a block in terms of funding and other mechanisms. So I have done a lot of work in this area in collaborative sense. I have done a collaborative project with the Himachal Pradesh government in early 2000s where Australian government and the government of Himachal got together, and they were looking at reducing the chopping down of trees on the mountains, if you like. And one of the ways they wanted to do that was to tackle a better housing design, so that you don't need that much wood burning fuel, so you don't have to chop down trees that might be holding up large parts of the hill area together through their root systems. So that project was over 3 to 4 years, well funded, and we ran trials of about 25 houses that were built for this purpose. And we found that through good design, you can significantly reduce the heating season, if you like, inside the premises, and at the same time improve the air quality inside by not burning as much wood inside the house. So there were co-benefits there as well. And more recently, at the moment, actually, I'm doing a World Bank funded project in Indonesia, which is looking at energy policy, creating better evidence to review what energy policy they have in terms of buildings area, and make suggestions about improvements, but very data led. So we have a few thousand buildings under monitoring with the World Bank and a partner in UK, University College London. So we do a lot of collaborative projects. So I'm happy to discuss issues in collaboration, and that's the focus of our session. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Dio. Okay, so now I'd now like to invite Ms. Shalini Goya Bala, Managing Director of the International Council for Circular Economy in India. She's a leading expert in sustainability and the author of India's first book on the circular economy, and the founding editor of the country's first journal dedicated to advancing research, innovation, and policy in this field. Thank you, Ms. Shalini Bala.
Hi, Frank. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you also, Dr. Dharam Buddhi, for inviting me to this very valuable discussion. I'm Shalini Goyal Bhalla. I'm the Managing Director, established in 2020 with the mandate of working on circularity across sectors. And as we all understand that when we talk about circularity, the first thing that comes is the energy transition, because most of our carbon footprint is through the energy consumption that we are looking at. And so there are very many experts who have spoken before me, and I'm sure a lot to hear during the day, who would be talking about how this energy transition can be made, can decarbonize our economies, both India and Australia. But I believe that the Indian target of 500 gigawatts of renewable energy is well under its way, but there are their own challenges, where we are looking at one side the waste that's being generated by the humongous use of the solar panels, but also looking at how to reduce the fossil fuel consumption and looking at not the coal-based, but perhaps more of renewable sources. Australia and India both are blessed to have wind and solar energy that could be used as renewable sources, but at the same time, how do we transition and how we look at circularity developing together is something that needs a lot of research that can go into it. Having said that, I think the collaborative effort between India and Australia are very important. From the government perspective, I understand that the Indian government has been working with the Australian government on several projects. There are both research as well as the business perspective of it, but I think it is a very good opportunity with AICR coming up with this expansion in looking at how the research can be enabled more, how can we embed more collaborative models, and I really look forward to the discussions that happen today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Goya Bala.
We now move into our second breakout session, focused on the support pillar of the AIRC framework. The session is about identifying how we can sustain and strengthen research partnership over time and ensure they remain impactful, inclusive, and mutually beneficial. To set the context, I would like to welcome Dr. Anil Kumar, Senior Scientist E with Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. He has authored over 67 publications, guided multiple research scholars, and is internationally recognized for his contribution to the field of bioenergy and biorefinery. Over to Dr. Anil Kumar.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Dharam Buddhi. So my research area is actually solar thermal and storage.
Okay.
Bioenergy. Yes.
That fits exactly to this theme.
So good morning and good afternoon to all the distinct delegates. So as I'm Dr. Anil Kumar, and I'm looking after the research and development in the renewable energy in the ministry, as well as solar thermal and new technologies like geothermal, tidal wave energy, etc. So it's my honor to be a part of this important discussion on support pillar of AIRC framework. On behalf of Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, I would like to share our perspective on the strengthening of long-term India-Australia research collaboration in the clean energy domain. So MNREs always believe that future of renewable energy lies not just in the technological innovation, but also enduring and inclusive partnerships. So we understand that successful collaboration must evolve beyond the initial project funding to create the institutional framework that are adaptable, resilient, and support over the time. So the ministry has a goal of 500 gigawatt non-fossil fuel-based capacity by 2030. So out of which 280 gigawatt is a solar and wind is a 140 gigawatt target. Small hydro is a 70 gigawatt and 10 gigawatt is a bioenergy target. As of now, we have achieved 234 gigawatt installed and with a 49% RE share of the installed capacity. So in our experience, long-term partnership can be derived through the institutional anchoring, like a center of excellence. Our ministry has a various center of excellence like National Center for Photovoltaic Research and Education at IIT Bombay, and Center of Excellence on Small Hydro at IIT Roorkee, and different specific technology center of excellence is there in our country. And of course, there is a bilateral research hubs and formalize the university and industry consortia is needed. So project like national priority with the clean pathway for deployment, such as Indian National Green Hydrogen Mission or solar manufacturing under Atmanirbhar Bharat are the important thrust area. And for the research and development part, we have a specific thrust area for R&D in the RE tech technology. So we believe that AIRC framework offer the valuable platform for embedding these principles into the India-Australia clean energy research. So the future of our ecosystem depends how well we can support the next generation. Of course, for the students, we should create the joint India-Australia doctoral fellowship in the priority areas like hydrogen, energy storage, solar thermal, or offshore wind. And encourage the sandwich PhD program with the co-supervision with both countries, enhancing the academic rigors and cultural exchange. And facilitate the mobility grant to attend the conference, conduct the fieldwork, and pursue the lab exchange in the partnering institutions. So apart from that, we may also like to organize the open thematic call for proposal that includes the new institution and startups. So as our ministry is supporting a renewable energy research and technology development program in which we generally do the funding for international projects. So for international project, we do 50% sharing cost from MNRE side. If the industry is interested, they can also share on that projects. So that is also possible. So definitely MNRE is keen to collaborate with the counterpart institution in Australia to joint support such effort. Thank you from my side.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the nodal ministry acts related to Indo-Australia. I feel India is doing a lot in renewable energy, in particular solar and wind. And I hope the solar mission, National Solar Mission, which the ministry initiated, launched in 2010, has taken a very beautiful shape. And initially it was focused on the solar parks, but later when it has been shifted to the solar rooftop power plants, perhaps that has made a big change in the mindset of the people and has made a big contribution so that everyone can make a contribution toward decarbonization. Perhaps it's really wonderful policy points you have talked about it. And we hope that through this group, AIRCF, the ministry would also be able to contribute for Indo-Australia collaboration. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks. And again, welcome all speakers and participants in the breakout session 3, Translate. So we now welcome to our third and final breakout session, focused on the Translate pillar of the AIRC framework. This part of the discussion is about turning research into real-world applications, from innovation and commercialization to early engagement with industry and delivery partners. I hope this is one of the very important area where you are looking the innovation and transfer of technology. To set this scene, we have two presenters. I will first introduce Dr. Jayachandra Swaminathan, Assistant Professor at the Interdisciplinary Center for Energy Research at ISC Bangalore. He is an expert in the application of thermodynamics and heat and mass transfer. I welcome you, Dr. Jayachandra. You also have an Indo-Australia research project, and we would like to hear you, and your time is for 5 minutes. Please.
Thank you so much, Professor Buddhi, and all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to introduce my work in this forum. So my focus is on entropy generation minimization, thermodynamic optimization, and a lot of the technologies that I worked on are essentially desalination technologies. A range of technologies, including reverse osmosis, multi-effect distillation, membrane distillation, electrodialysis, working based on pressure, heat, electric field, etc. Usually, desalination is considered to be the application of removing pure water from saline seawater for drinking applications. But that particular process is perhaps more well known as of today. A lot of the current applications are related to brine management, like ultra high saline brines, trying to recover pure water out of it, and also resource recovery from these brines. So this was the context of the AISRF project that I had with my partner at the University of Technology, Sydney, where we were looking at using solar thermal energy to concentrate brines towards resource recovery, with my focus being on the brine concentration. So some of the specific projects that I would like to highlight are optimal control and operation of batch reverse osmosis and batch mechanical vapor recompression systems for, again, high recovery applications towards zero liquid discharge. And as an offshoot of the Australia-India collaborative project, something that I'm working on right now is on energy positive pure water production towards green hydrogen generation. Basically trying to capture the waste heat from solar PV panels towards water distillation. The goal is not to really make the distillation process really efficient, but just to capture enough waste heat to get water to try to eliminate the water treatment plant that is invariably required as an additional infrastructure for green hydrogen production plants through electrolysis. The big picture goal is to use some evaporative cooling as a part of this waste heat recovery system, so that the PV panel temperature also decreases. This is why I call it energy positive. So I'm also getting some additional electric work out in addition to getting pure water. At the Energy Research Center here at IISc, I have senior colleagues working on solar thermal power, thermal energy storage, and biomass to hydrogen. So these are also areas that I hope to contribute to. With respect to the theme of today's session, translation, my thoughts are strongly influenced by observing around 4 of my lab mates from MIT going on to start companies, most of them quite successfully at that. So with that in mind, I'll be looking forward to the discussion coming up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jayachandra, for basically sharing your research areas and the work which you are doing at your institution. Perhaps green hydrogen is the future around the globe. Thank you very much. I think now I would like to welcome Dr. Deepak Gadiaji. I called him a solar man. He's the person who introduced the solar technology to the ground level for a common man in India and maybe other countries. Presently, Dr. Deepak Gadia is the chairman and managing director of Sunrise CSP India, with over 35 years of experience in solar energy and sustainability sectors. He was instrumental in bringing the Schaeffler concentrating technology to India and successfully commercializing it. In addition to his commercial ventures, Mr. Gadia actively mentors startups and supports entrepreneurs in the clean tech space. I welcome you, sir, and now over to you for next 5 to 6 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Dharam Buddhi. I'm so glad that because of this session, we are sort of reconnected again. I have always held you in very high respect, and I'm glad that now this whole platform is bringing us together and we'll get a chance to work together. So friends, basically, as Dr. Dharam Buddhi introduced, I am more known for my solar thermal work. So I would just like to give you background so that we can build upon when we talk about translation. So I had studied in Germany. I had done my master's in MIT, USA, came back to India, and then started an NGO to sort of make sure that India does not make the same mistake like the West, where economic growth is given priority over environment. So we started an NGO, and then as an NGO, we very quickly realized that it is very easy to tell people what to do or what not to do, but especially what not to do, and we could not tell them what to do. And so we saw at that time the biggest challenge, I'm talking of 1985, the biggest challenge of that time was deforestation. So when we started telling people not to deforest because it would lead to drought and all, which it was there at that time in Gujarat, people said, sir, we know we should not cut the forest, but what's the alternative? We are too poor. The wood is the only thing which we can survive on because we only get 2 liters of kerosene at subsidy. And there is no other option for us by LPG or even diesel or electricity. So we realized that we have to offer a solution, and that the technology which was available at that time, the box cooker, could only boil and bake things. So though it was a functional technology, it was not spreading because it was not doing what people wanted. People wanted to cook very quickly. People wanted to fry. People wanted to be able to make chapati. So we realized there was a need for technology which could do that. And luckily, we had a friend, Dr. Dieter Seifert in Germany, who had developed a parabolic dish of 1.4 meter dia called SK14, where you could reflect the light at the focus and you get 200, 300 degrees centigrade, and you can boil, you could fry, you can make chapati, and you can even put a pressure cooker and fill a vessel. So we thought, wow, now we have the technology, so we'll succeed. We brought the technology from Germany to India, started indigenizing, manufacturing it, offering it. Initially, we were very successful, but very quickly we realized that the people who needed the technology could not afford it. And people who could afford it did not want to use it because they said, we don't want to go to the sun. And now what we had done is that we had to be a social enterprise. We had started a company to offer the solution. So that the idea was that we can, with the money we make, we can run the NGO. So we, as a company, we have to have a bottom line and we have to make profit. So we said, now what do we do? So initially we asked the ladies, why don't they use them? And they said, we don't want to go in the sun. So this is how we met Mr. Wolfgang Schaeffler to Dr. Dieter Seifert, where he said, here's a technology where you can put the parabola outside, you can reflect the light in the kitchen, and you can cook in the comfort of the kitchen. And this is how we brought the Schaeffler technology to India, and very quickly realized that, yes, that was possible, but at a very high cost. So we shifted the focus from domestic cooking to community cooking. And from community cooking, we started offering where you could, with one dish, cook for about 100 children. And then we got an inquiry from Brahma Kumari saying we want to do steam cooking because we cannot have too many dishes and all. And so instead of bringing light in the kitchen, we started bringing heat in the kitchen. And this is where the challenges start. So I'm very glad that we are talking about this subject. How do we transfer the technology from entrepreneurs, scientists, laboratories to the real world? So we went to ministry to say, look, we have a technology where we are bringing light in the kitchen. Now we want to bring in heat in the kitchen. We were politely said, no, we will not fund you because it was so good. Someone must have done it. Why do you think you can do what others have not done? So the lack of belief in our officials in us didn't help. Luckily, we could get money from German government through the GAT, German Appropriate Technology Exchange. And this is the world's first solar steam cooking system was developed and installed at Brahmakumari, and it worked. And our company went on to become the world's biggest company, and we did many projects, including systems for the Indian Army, for the IBM of the world, for temples, for hospitals. And we were very successful, and we became the world's biggest. And the biggest cooking system we offered was for 50,000 meals per day. And then one day, the NGO where I am based now in ashram, I live in an ashram called Munisa Ashram. My chairman said, Deepak, you give me heat when it is hot. Can you do not cooling? And I said, yeah, from heat you can do heat. He says, no, I can also cool it. I am having a boiler where I am producing steam. So I said, oh, that means I don't have to replace new technology. Actually, I have to only produce solar steam and replace the boiler steam. And the technology was already there. And this is where we learned that it's not necessary to reinvent the wheel. You could actually start integrating solutions. And this is how we installed India's first 100-ton air conditioning system, which works successfully. And that this time ministry believed in us and gave a 50% subsidy. This is because of this new development of 100-ton vapor absorption chiller came up. And then I sold my company, shifted to Munisa Ashram. And suddenly one day I got a phone call from Australia saying, Deepak, we would like to come to India. We have been invited by Dholera. Dholera is a smart city coming up in Gujarat. And they have a big problem. There is a big city coming up, plant city, smart city, but there is no water. So we want to do desalination. So I was very glad that when Chandraji said, oh, desalination is something which you're talking about. So I said, great. But then I said, why do we need to bring a new technology from Australia? I have already done big systems, large systems. Why don't we build upon that? And they said, our technology is better. So I said, how much better? And they said, no, our technology is 100% better than Schaeffler's system. And of course, not believe it. I said, no, I don't believe you. So I went to Australia and went and visited ANU and saw the big dish. And this is where I realized the difference between what I had done was tinkering. So basically, I just kept on scaling, improving, and went on from small dish to Schaeffler to steam. But they've did not put much science. And luckily, because there was a vacuum, I could keep on manufacturing and becoming a successful entrepreneur. But when I visited ANU, I suddenly realized what really research meant. They had spent 40 years. They had started with a 20 square meter dish, then built a 400 square meter dish, and then built a 500 square meter dish. And then they had licensed it to Wizard Power, which afterwards became Sunrise CSP. And then they wanted to commercialize to come to India. So I joined hand with them because I wanted to bring the technology which is cutting edge. And the best part of what was that there was a lot of science into it. They had perfected the technology, not only in manufacturing, but in performance. The receiver has an efficiency of 97.2%. So I said, great, I have a technology developed, tested at ANU, I will be able to be successful. But as soon as I came here and we wanted to do fundraising, the challenge started. Indian government again said, oh, where has it been built? Where is it working? Who will fund it? Investors do not want to give you money. So when we talk of translation, I think just having a good technology is not sufficient. We need to be able to show economic viability to it, not just the performance, but also the market for it, and then investors to invest into you, trust you. And then this is how we raise money in USA. Again, we could not get money in India because in India, if you have something, they want to first see that, or they want to buy you out. They don't want to really work with you longer. So with seed money, we built the first dish. And now we have built the world's first largest dish in India at our ashram to test it, prove it. And then again, when we went back, we said, okay, now how do you fund it? So suddenly we again realized all of a sudden ministry, MNRE, which had a great solar concentrator program, has removed subsidy on it. So there is no subsidy. And then suddenly, because there is no subsidy, people are not incentivized. So I think there is a very urgent need for collaboration between industry, between academic world, so that the technology know-how which is developed at ANU can be transferred to India, because we can do a lot of application engineering. ANU has its own priority and also very high cost if anything you do at ANU. But of course, ANU are our principal partners with whom we develop, but we would like the partnership to be happening between ANU and some institute here, so that we can do a lot of application engineering here under their guidance. We would like government support to do R&D work.
Deepak, thank you very much. You have really shared the real examples which you have basically translated the technologies to different parts of the country. And perhaps hearing you is the real motivation to all of the participants. Thank you very much.
I just want to say, thank you all for your thoughtful contributions throughout today's session. It's been incredibly valuable to hear such a wide range of perspectives from both Australia and India. Today's session is one of 4 thematic workshops contributing to the framework. So there's 3 more, one on advanced manufacturing technologies, cybersecurity and digital governance, and sustaining healthy communities. So if you have a colleague or collaborator working in these areas, we encourage you to share the links and invite them to participate. The links are in the chat. And some of you may be particularly interested in the manufacturing workshop as it crossovers with today's energy and climate themes. So anyway, the Australia-India Institute will also keep you updated on the official launch of the framework. And I just want to conclude by thanking you for joining us today and helping shape what we hope will be a long-term, impactful bilateral initiative. So thank you, everyone. And I'd like to thank everyone for participation and all the speakers once again. Thank you very much. And thank you, Brianna, for doing a great job in organising this and putting it together. Thank you very much.
Well, Frank, would appreciate an intro to you.
Thanks, everyone. I think the last 2.5 hours, we had a wonderful discussions. And that's maybe the support, the technology transfer, the research, the innovation, and the issues raised by the speakers. They were really very useful to collaborate between India and Australia. Yeah. And I think there's a need, I suggest that there's a need to extend this platform so that major researchers, administrators, as well the industry persons can contribute more and can collaborate more to that. So I think I must thank all the organizers, those who have helped us to support it and provide a platform to all of us for future collaborations and to share our experiences and what kind of the collaborations we can do in future. I must thank everyone, and in particular the speakers and participants, those who have contributed a lot, and hope in future we will be developing the best policy for these collaborations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Professor Buddhi. I want to thank you as well, because I know you spent a lot of time in getting together the speakers and communicating with them and all the participants. Thank you very much. Okay, I believe this has been a successful workshop, so thank you everyone for joining us, and keep out for notifications in the future on it. Thank you.
Thank you.